When the tornado came, everyone panicked. But when elderly farmer Henry Carter organized the townspeople and launched a rescue operation, everyone was shocked because no one knew he had commanded the army for 30 years. Welcome to The Story Begins. Before we begin this inspiring story, tell me in the comments which city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like these hidden heroes need to be told, hit that subscribe button and help us keep these stories alive. Meadowbrook was a small town in Kansas. This farming community of 3,000 people was surrounded by corn and wheat fields, a peaceful American heartland settlement, wide lands, open skies, warm people, a place where everyone knew everyone, where neighborly relationships were strong. Henry Carter was a 75-year-old, tall, gray-haired, blue-eyed, calm man. He always wore clean farmer's clothes, displayed a humble attitude when speaking, and was kind and sincere with everyone. Henry had been farming in Meadowbrook for 40 years. Every morning he woke up at 5:30, checked his fields, tended to his animals, and returned home at sunset. On his 500-acre farm, he grew corn and soybeans. He lived alone, leading a quiet and modest life. The townspeople loved Henry very much. His neighbors respected him. Young farmers sought his advice. Everyone called him Uncle Henry. Town Mayor Tom Wilson said this about Henry: "Henry is a wonderful person. He's lived here for 40 years. He's our most reliable, most helpful neighbor, but he's very humble. He doesn't talk much about his past." This was true. Henry wouldn't talk about his personal history. The townspeople didn't fully know where he came from, what work he did, whether he had family. They just thought he was a good-hearted, hard-working farmer. Henry's behavior on the farm was remarkable. He organized everything perfectly. His field was arranged with geometric precision. His animals were fed according to a specific system. Every detail was planned, every movement calculated. "Henry's farm is maintained with military precision," said neighboring farmer Bill Thompson. "Everything is in its place. Nothing is random. It's like an engineer planned it." The town doctor, Dr. Sarah Martinez, liked observing Henry. "This man is very disciplined. His posture, way of speaking, leadership ability. He definitely has a special background." But Dr. Martinez's observations remained at the curiosity level. Henry gave no clues to anyone. Other important people living in Meadowbrook: school principal Linda Davis, 45 years old, 20-year educator; police chief Mike Rodriguez, 38 years old, responsible for town security; and local pastor James Wilson, 50 years old, spiritual leader keeping the community together. They all loved Henry, but they all wondered about his mystery too. Henry's most striking characteristic was how he behaved during crisis moments. When natural disasters, agricultural problems, social issues occurred, Henry always stayed calm and suggested practical solutions. Once a major fire broke out in town. While everyone was in panic, Henry had systematically directed the fire crews, prepared an evacuation plan, and helped get through the fire with minimal damage. Henry showed incredible leadership that day. Fire Chief Robert Chen had said, "But I can't understand how he could act so organized. It's like he was used to managing such situations." Henry's private life was also mysterious. He participated in social activities, went to church, chatted with neighbors, but didn't talk deeply about his personal past. He lived alone at home, leading a simple life. Actually, Henry Carter's real story was much more complex. His birth name was Henry James Carter. Born in Iowa in 1949, he grew up on a farming family, but his life took a very different direction. In 1967, at age 18, he entered West Point Military Academy and graduated with excellent grades. Between 1971 to 2001, he served in the U.S. Army for 30 years. Henry's military career was legendary. He started as a second lieutenant and quickly rose through intelligence, leadership, and strategic thinking abilities. Vietnam, Gulf War, Bosnia, Afghanistan. He participated in the most critical operations. Between 1995 to 2001, Henry served as a general at the Pentagon.
He was responsible for national defense strategy, had top-level security clearance, and was a leader who played a role in critical military decisions. Henry's professional record was flawless: Distinguished Service Medal, Legion of Merit, Bronze Star Medal. He received the most prestigious military awards. He worked with NATO allies and managed international peacekeeping operations. But in 2001, after the 9/11 attacks, a life-changing event occurred for Henry. During operations planning in Afghanistan, he had disagreements with upper management about minimizing civilian casualties, and took early retirement to maintain his ethical standpoint. After that decision, Henry left behind his 30-year military career and set out to find different meaning in his life. His childhood farm memories were calling him. Returning to civilian life was difficult. High-level government positions were being offered, but Henry wanted a peaceful life, wanted to connect with the soil. In 2004, he bought a small farm in Kansas and started with a completely new identity. Farming gave Henry peace. Working with the land, following natural cycles had replaced the stress of military planning. For 20 years, he hadn't shared this new life with anyone. That Wednesday afternoon, Henry was working normally in his field. They were in spring planting season, doing soil preparation, preparing for seeding. The weather was beautiful, there was peace and quiet. At 3 o'clock, Henry heard a weather alert on the radio. Severe thunderstorm warning, possible tornadoes. This was normal for Kansas, but this time it felt different. Atmospheric pressure, wind patterns, cloud formations. Henry's military weather training was sounding alarms. He went to town, checked National Weather Service updates. The situation was much worse than a normal warning. EF3, EF4 tornado possibility. Direct hit to Meadowbrook probable. Evacuation might be necessary. Henry immediately called Mayor Wilson. "Tom, this storm is serious. We need to prepare evacuation procedures." "Henry, this is normal Kansas weather. Aren't you overreacting?" "Tom, trust me on this. We'll have a major tornado hit within 6 hours. We need to prepare the community." Tom Wilson found Henry's concern unusual, but respected it. "Henry, what should we do?" Henry's military training kicked in. Crisis management protocols, evacuation planning, resource coordination, 30 years of experience activated. "Tom, call an emergency meeting. Police Chief Rodriguez, Fire Chief Chen, Dr. Martinez, School Principal Davis, gather everyone. We'll prepare an action plan within 30 minutes. At 4 o'clock, an emergency meeting of town leaders was held. Henry presented a detailed storm analysis. Based on meteorological data, an EF4 tornado will hit our town at 9 p.m. We need to prepare evacuation shelters, identify vulnerable populations, organize emergency supplies. Police Chief Rodriguez was surprised. "Henry, are you a meteorologist? How do you do this level of analysis?" Henry paused. It was time to reveal the truth. "Mike, I'm retired military. Weather pattern analysis, crisis management were part of my training." "What kind of military?" "Army. General level, 30 years service." Everyone in the meeting room was shocked. Humble farmer Henry was actually a retired general. Mayor Wilson was amazed. "Henry, you were a general. Why didn't you ever tell us?" "Because that life is behind me. But now I need to use my skills to protect the community." Henry took charge of the meeting. With his military command experience, he prepared a systematic plan. Evacuation priorities: first schools, nursing homes, mobile home parks, shelter locations, school gymnasium, community center, church basement, emergency supplies, water, food, medical supplies, communications. Police Chief Rodriguez, prepare a traffic management plan. Fire Chief Chen, prepare rescue equipment. Dr. Martinez, prepare medical emergency protocols. Everyone naturally responded to Henry's authority. Decades of leadership experience, command presence, crisis decision-making, everything came back. At 5 o'clock, a community-wide evacuation announcement was made. Henry was managing the operation at the coordination center. "We'll use school buses for transportation. priority transportation for elderly and disabled citizens, separate arrangement for pet owners. Henry's military logistics expertise was invaluable. Resource allocation, timing coordination, contingency planning, every detail was covered. At 6 o'clock, the evacuation process began. Henry was giving field commands. Team A, evacuation from mobile home park. Team B, pickup from elderly housing. Team C, remaining students from school. Bill Thompson was observing Henry. Henry, you've transformed into a completely different person. Where does this commanding presence come from? Bill, leadership skills activate in emergency situations. What's important is keeping everyone safe. At 7:30, the evacuation was 90% complete. Henry was doing final checks. All shelters report status. Medical team standby. Communication systems check. Dr. Martinez was watching Henry's transformation. Henry, you're a natural-born leader. Where does this experience come from? Dr. Martinez, long story. What's important now is safely weathering the storm. At 8:45, tornado sirens began sounding. On radar, a massive EF4 tornado was approaching directly toward Meadowbrook. Henry maintained radio contact with everyone in the shelters. All shelters, tornado approaching. Stay in designated safe areas. Remain calm. At 9:15, the tornado hit the town. Incredible winds, debris flying, buildings shaking, exactly as Henry had predicted. The tornado lasted 20 minutes. Infrastructure damage was significant, but casualties were minimal. Henry's evacuation plan worked perfectly. After the storm passed, damage assessment began. Henry was coordinating search and rescue operations. Teams, systematic grid search. Check every building, every residence. Report status immediately. Henry's military training was life-saving. Organization, communication, resource management, professional-level emergency response. When morning came, the final count was announced. 0 fatalities, minimal injuries, successful evacuation. Henry's leadership had saved the town. Mayor Wilson found Henry. Henry, you did an incredible job, but now I have questions. You said you were a general. What kind of general? Henry took a deep breath. It was time to tell the story he had hidden for 20 years. Tom, I was responsible for strategic planning at the Pentagon. 30 years military service, international operations, crisis management. At the Pentagon, serious, very serious. But I retired in 2001. I wanted a different life. Agriculture, simple living, peaceful existence. Tom nodded with understanding. Henry, why did you hide it? Because I'm a farmer now. Military career is behind me. But last night showed that my skills are still valuable. The community began celebrating Henry's heroic leadership. Local news crews came to cover the story. Reporter Jennifer Walsh interviewed Henry. General Carter, how did you organize the town so perfectly? Henry remained humble. Miss Walsh, I just helped the community. Everyone contributed. But your military background clearly made the difference. Military training is valuable, but what's important is teamwork. Everyone worked together. Days passed. Henry's story became regional news. Retired Pentagon general saves Kansas town. But Henry was uncomfortable with the publicity. Dr. Martinez visited Henry. Henry, the community is incredibly grateful to you. But adjustment will be difficult. Everyone will look differently. Dr. Martinez, I'm still the same person. Still a farmer, still a neighbor. Military background is just part of the past. But Henry, those leadership skills, maybe you should take a more active role in the community. Henry considered this. For decades, he had avoided leadership, preferring a simple life. But the recent crisis showed that his skills were still needed. A week later, a town council meeting was held. Mayor Wilson presented a proposal. Henry, we've created an emergency management coordinator position. The community sees you as a leader. Will you accept? Henry thought carefully. Taking an official position would change his peaceful farmer identity. But it was a community service opportunity. Tom, I appreciate the offer, but I want to remain a farmer. I'll help in emergency situations, but I don't want a full-time position." "Understood, Henry. But know that the community looks up to you." Months passed. Henry returned to his normal farming routine, but occasionally did consulting in emergency situations, flood preparations, severe weather response, community safety initiatives. Henry found balance. Farming remained his primary focus, but he used his leadership skills for community service. One afternoon, young farmer Jake Martinez approached. "Henry, I'm struggling with farm management. How do you stay so organized?" Henry smiled. "Jake, I apply planning and organization techniques I learned in the military to farming." "You were in the military?" "Long time ago, Jake. But what's important is this: leadership skills are transferable. They can be applied to farming too." Jake was interested. "Would you teach me?" Henry embraced the mentoring opportunity. He began teaching young farmers leadership planning, crisis management. Another year passed. Henry's reputation grew in the region. He was known as the farmer general, but his preferred identity was still humble farmer. One evening, Henry was sitting at his farmhouse, reflecting on his career. At the Pentagon, he had developed global strategies. Now he was serving the local community. Both meaningful but different impact. The phone rang. Mayor Wilson was calling. "Henry, the State Emergency Management Agency heard about your expertise. There's a state-level consulting opportunity." Henry politely declined. "Tom, I appreciate it, but I'm happy here. Local community is enough." "But Henry, you could have an impact at the state level." "Tom, I'm making the biggest impact here. Helping neighbors, mentoring young farmers. This is enough." Years later, Henry Carter continues farming in Meadowbrook. Still humble, still helpful, still respected. His military background is now an open secret, but his primary identity is farmer. Children grow up in town, hearing General Henry stories. The heroic tornado night has become legend. Former students occasionally visit, from high school, college, adult life. Always grateful, always inspired. "General Henry, you taught us about leadership. General Henry, you showed us service continues in different forms. General Henry, you proved heroes come in all shapes." Today Henry Carter is 75 years old, still farming, still quietly serving the community. Pentagon medals are dusty in the closet, but the spirit of service is stronger than ever, because real heroes adapt their service to where they're needed most. Henry served his country in war rooms and battlefields. Now he serves his community in fields and meeting rooms.
As the story begins, we ask, have you met someone like Henry? Someone who left a prestigious career for a meaningful life? Someone who found new purpose in an unexpected place? Share in the comments, because our communities are full of people like Henry Carter, quiet leaders, who chose service over status, meaning over prestige, community over career advancement. Subscribe to The Story Begins for more inspiring stories of people who discovered that the greatest adventures often begin when we choose to serve others where we are, with what we have. Until the next story, remember, leadership isn't about the title you hold, but about the lives you touch and the communities you strengthen. Henry Carter taught us that true generals never retire from service, they just find new battlefields where they're needed most.